Alright, this much loved camera of mine, a Canon PowerShot SX610HS. This is one that I've used on innumerable YouTube videos for shooting, including train videos and all sorts of things, and a lot of the electronic projects, all the Heathkit restoration projects. Not any of the woodshop projects, because I have a beater camera for that. But even though it still takes good pictures and videos, it's got a problem with the lens mechanism. It just freezes. The camera detects that and shuts down, and I could always fix it by jostling it a little bit, and it would get it working again, but now it's at the point where it's just permanently stuck. Canon hasn't serviced these in a long time. And I'm actually shooting this video on an identical camera, which is essentially brand new. There's a lot of these still available on eBay and other places, usually for a pretty high amount, several $100s. I think they recognize that, you know, these are new old stock they're in somewhat of a demand. In many ways, these are nicer than Canon's newer cameras, at least ergonomically. Anyway, so I thought as a last gasp on this thing, I would try taking it apart, or at least looking inside, before I send it to the great electronic scrap heap in the sky. Alright, 2 screws on each end were removed and 4 screws on the bottom. And I think this is going to allow the front and rear panels to come off. Alright, the rear panel came off. And it has just the operator for the mode switch here. Which engages something on the circuit board. It has plastic spring buttons for all these operators here, including you know, plastic springs to allow the 4-way control to work. That's pretty much all that's on the rear. Lots of crud has gotten into this over the years, obviously. One reason why it's jamming up. This is the front. Has the inside of the rubber grip. A lot of dust. And a plastic assembly that does something probably related to the lens. Dirt, dirt, dirt. There's the membrane board, which gets activated by all the buttons. And this little tiny switch here has that little plastic bit on it which engages the 2 fingers on the mechanism on the rear panel. So that's how that gets to it. Really tiny switch. I'm going to clean this off a little bit before I go further. Alright, here's the front of the camera with the facade removed. You can see the pop-out spring for the battery right there. Some of the switch mechanisms related to the shutter button, and which also does the zoom and menu navigation. There's LED there, which is part of the infrared range sensor. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. There's a little coin cell down in there. Spring for something or another, I don't know what. And I think this is the capacitor that's used for the flash. And then a little flex circuit board, and this relates Well, this camera has Wi-Fi on it. I wouldn't be surprised if this little bit here has something to do with the Wi-Fi. It looks like an antenna. I wouldn't be surprised. Of course, there's the flash pop-up mechanism there. Oh, that's what the spring is for. Okay. That's the spring that lifts the flash up when you trigger it. I can flip the LCD assembly up now. Looks like it's got a ribbon cable down there. Not sure how to detach that yet. I'm guessing this is a shield. I need to get down an extra layer inside of this. It looks like there's a couple of plastic releases there I can try prying on. Okay, that aluminum shield just fell out, and it reveals what I believe to be the tail end of the lens mechanism. A flex circuit board going up to it, and a bunch more screws I can take out. There's, let's see, that would be the that's the right side of the camera, exposing the USB and whatever that other plug is for. There's another screw I have to remove to get this piece off. Okay, with the top removed, not quite sure what this is up on the top there, but it's a shielded component with a ribbon cable going to it with quite a lot of pins on it, so something going on there, but it's normally under the top. And here's the dome switch. That's for the on-off button. And this is a little, the pads of a small rotary switch that has to do with the trigger and zoom and menu and mode button, the do-all button. I think that this here has got to be the actual trigger button. Oh yeah, it does have a click to it. Very little motion. And this has a more pronounced click to it. And we can see now a better view here. You can see the wipers that engage those contacts there. There's even another screw here for some reason. I can't tell if I'm getting focus on this or not. Okay, that screw covered up this little spring here, which you might be able to see. That's what centers, whoops, spring just went flying off. It's what centers this mechanism. Yeah, there's that little spring. Okay, so there's that little circuit board. Something pretty important goes on here, but I have no idea what. Why is it up on top? Okay, I was able to unplug the ribbon cable from this assembly. I'll see if I can get the can off and see what's under there. We can see that this flex circuit board here, which has a lot, well, it's not the same one that goes to this, I don't think, but it handles all this stuff up here, and then it wraps around, and there's some sort of an IC there. Oh no, that's the mode switch. I talked about that before. And then it goes to all these buttons. So it looks like it's one flex circuit board for all operator input devices on the top and on the right rear. Okay, so there's the shield removed from the circuit board. Some sort of powerful looking chip from all the pins on it, a few support components. Alright, I looked up what this is. It's a sort of a generic part. It seems to be made by a lot of different companies. It's the 88W8801. It's a highly integrated single band 2.4 gigahertz IEEE 802.11n system on chip, which includes a CPU or microprocessor of some kind, but a CPU, memory, various interfaces, including 2 or 3 interfaces, including the USB. So that probably is how the USB port on this gets handled, and maybe that other port that I didn't know what it was for offhand. So high throughput Wi-Fi direct conversion RF radio circuit on there. So the board, amongst other things, has that chip. It has a crystal, some power circuitry, the GPIO interface, which I suppose goes to other things on the camera. Again, the USB port electronics, and the Wi-Fi antenna, which is directly driven off the chip. I'm going to guess that that white thing on the right is the Wi-Fi antenna. It looks kind of antenna-ish to me, and nothing else on the board looks like an antenna. I don't know if this is the image processor. I'm sort of doubting it. I would suspect that would be proprietary Canon, but this may be the chip that does everything else on the camera. Alright, I'm able to remove this frame now. This is more substantial metal, but a pretty complex piece of folding. You look at these cameras and people may complain if they cost $300, but it's kind of amazing how much stuff they pack into these. And this is hardly new. Alright, there's this big dingus here. This would be the lens assembly. Connected up with a ribbon cable, and the ribbon cable from the LCD display goes under there, so I think there's going to be more goodies behind this once I figure out how to get that off. Alright, hopefully this will come off now. Yep, it did. So again, this is the flex circuit board that handles the top controls and the rest of the controls on the lower rear right. And it's on this metal frame, which is probably also a shield. And there's this little ribbon cable that goes down and plugs into the main circuit board. Let me get this LCD unplugged. Alright, that's the LCD. This extra plug came off on its own when I pulled it up. That might just be for power, or maybe that's the backlighting. It looks like it only has 2 or 3 wires in it. That might just be power / backlighting for the LCD. Alright, there's all sorts of goodies here. Well, let's get rid of this top side flex circuit board. This is the one that goes up to that tiny little controller. That's this. And also there's a bunch of stuff that just came off on the top. Well, no, this would be the left. So there's the ribbon cable going to that. some extra circuitry down here. It's basically the flash assembly. And there's this battery. I suppose that's what maintains the time. Although if you take the main battery out for very long, it loses time and date. So if this is what that's for, then it doesn't seem to have much capacity. So we've got to disconnect this from a few things to get this apart further. On the top of the camera, just to the right there, is a set of 4 little air holes. And that goes on top of this, which I presume is the little speaker, which allows you to play back sounds from videos just to make sure it picked up the sound. Also, it makes little chirps and noises depending how you have the sounds set up in the menu. So this would be the speaker here. And there's also going to be a microphone on this somewhere. I think it's this right here. This is not a stereo camera. So I think this will be the microphone. And indeed there are 2 little leads coming off of it which go onto this same flex circuit board. Okay, here's the fairly large complex plastic molding that includes the battery housing, the support for the bottom door, so this has to be fairly robust. Again, there's the microphone in there. There's the microphone inside of its rubber sheath that gives it some damping against pickup of just handling noise on the camera. And as I recall, that works pretty well. Every time I use this thing, you know, any fumbling around with my hands, it never picked that up with the microphone. So that seems to be effective. All that stuff ends up terminating on this flex circuit board, which ultimately goes to the main circuit board through that connector. And here's that infrared sensor there, which is used for range finding. So I'm not sure if this is actually the rangefinder optical device. This may be just the red LED, which is flashing when video is being taken, and also flashes if you've got if you're in photo taking mode and you've set the timer, you know, a 10-second timer, so you can run over and be in the picture yourself. I think that's all this is. I looked at the flex lead going to it, and there's only 2 conductors in it. So I believe this is just an LED. And again, I'm still not sure what the function of that battery is. That's about all that is on that assembly, so I can put that aside. Now we can address this some more. This is the guts. Yeah, so this port here, I believe that, I don't have the manual for this handy, but this is USB over here, and I think this is the video interface, so you can connect this up to a monitor. For example, if you took a video with this and then wanted to play it back on a monitor, it could be like a micro HDMI connector. Not really sure off the top of my head. Maybe I should look on the actual camera. Yeah, here's the hatch for that. That is the audio video output digital HDMI. So that's what that extra jack is for. So here's the main circuit board disconnected. It has the SD card connector, takes up a big part of the back side. it has the battery connector on it. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of this circuitry right around here has to do with power management and the SD card interface probably, and may have drivers for these two connectors, the HDMI, USB, some support components for that. I would guess that's what all this stuff is. There does look to be a crystal on there, bunch of little tiny ICs, some really small stuff. So the stuff that handles the optics is going to be here. This is going to be probably a proprietary Canon, yeah. No point even looking that up. This is going to be the thing that handles, probably handles focusing, handles lens controls, I wouldn't be surprised. The charge coupled device, CCD, that's the image sensor, that's going to be controlled and processed by this. And of course interfacing that out to the controller that's running everything else on the camera, including external interfacing. So that plus this is the brains of the operation. But I think this is responsible for a lot of the quality, you know, the processing of the image coming from the CCD is done here. So depending on how good this chip is at its various tasks would determine, you know, things like how does it handle low light situations, how good is it at focusing, you know, when you're zooming in and out. That's optical on this, but it also has digital zoom, so that would be done here. So a lot of stuff going on this board. Now we've got this big monstrosity. This is the lens assembly and charge coupled device, or CCD. Since I didn't find the separate sensor, I'm presuming that either it's using image analysis for focusing, or it has something that shines out through the lens and handles the focusing. I guess there's a number of ways it could be done. This appears to be a motor here, and it has sensors on it and drive circuitry. That could be a sensor there, I'm not really sure. Or maybe another motor. That actually might be another motor. So one of these motors might be what runs the zoom mechanism in and out for the telescoping lens, and the other motor might be, you know, what moves the internal lenses in and out for focusing. That would be my guess. I doubt it's the same motor doing both. This is a bigger motor, so that would make sense if it's the thing moving the lenses in and out. And then this other thing is probably the zoom or the focus motor. This connector here, yeah, I think this is the connector that's going to handle the motors and other stuff, while this connector that plugs directly into the main board is probably all servicing the CCD, which would be this on the back. There's a few more screws on here I can take apart. Okay, I was able to pry off the back, and that one motor here, this little guy here, it goes to this thing that looks like a long worm gear, and it has, there might be a, I think it's a long worm gear. Seems to be threaded anyway. And then there's a shaft next to it on which some sort of a gear reduction set of little gears are stacked. And this other little piece, which I'm not going to be able to get a good view on with this camera. So this here is the CCD, where the light goes into the CCD. I think this is the iris mechanism here. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like metal, but it's really, that could be metal or it's some sort of stiff black plastic. But I think this whole thing here is the mechanism that opens and closes the iris just before the light goes into the CCD. Oh, there's even more gears down here. A couple more gears. Those are all associated with that smaller motor. Yeah, another gear. Which is really complex. It'd be fascinating to see how they come up with the molds for things like this. A lot of dirt has made its way into here, and I think it all comes in around the telescoping pieces, and yeah. Oh, there's also the iris is back here, but the lens cover mechanism has got to be up in this area because it covers up this lens when it's turned off. So there's two of those things that have to be motorized or solenoid operated or something. So there's some cam operation built in right here. You can see that probably has something to do with moving the whole mechanism in and out. Yeah, you can see the little worm gear on the end of the bigger motor. Well, I think this is where I'm going to stop. There don't seem to be any more screws on here for further disassembly. There are a few round things there, but they don't seem to be screws unless there's some very special kind. I don't have anything that would engage them, so anyway, I'm going to stop the disassembly at this point. Very interesting to see how much stuff they can cram in there and how they go about doing it.